This hour is brought to you by Sweetland Waste and Removal Service, a homegrown company serving southern Indiana since 1995.
Well, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along.
Well, come on along and welcome aboard Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday, November 14th. I hope you're having a great week. We appreciate you joining us. Jake's at the wheel, keeping things on the track. I'm Jim Coyle joining you. As always, on the program today, Indiana Sports Beat Reporters Day. Looking forward to getting back to that after a bye week last week. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Traditional join us. Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal. And Elton Hayes from CNHI in Penn State as we get the other side. Indiana traveling to Happy Valley this week to take on the Nittany Lions in a big, big football game for both teams, honestly. Indiana would like to have this win to take that next step in the conference and to ensure a much better bowl appearance for themselves at the end of this season. Penn State, of course, wants to remain in the conversation for the college football playoffs. Of course, that took a major hit with that loss at Minnesota last week. So we'll get into all that. Lots of signings yesterday. Of course, basketball. Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal made I have not been looking hard, but I'm sure that they've got all their paperwork in. The volleyball team, wow, what a class they've signed for Coach Steve Aird, the best in school history. I had a conversation with him yesterday. We'll hear from him later in the show. But big doings for everybody, and looking for a great time here today. Basketball underway last night. Some games that were fun to watch. Ohio State had a pretty good game. They took it to Villanova, man. They did not take any prisoners. That was about a 20-point lead for most of the time of that game. As I watched it from Yogi's. Enjoyed a nice little meal there last night. Had a fun time out at Yogi's again. Jeff Newton, George Leach, we hung out and talked for quite a while. And then I got to hang out with John Leskowski and his son Scott. They own the Culvers here in Bloomington over on 3rd Street. So it's a good fun time. Yogi's becoming the place to be, man. Good times last night on that. But NCAA basketball last night, like I said, there were a few games. Looking for some scores here. Let's go back a day. What was that final score on that Purdue game? Purdue took a loss to Marquette. Ohio State, Ohio State's ranked 16th. They played number 10 Villanova last night. Ohio State was a 1.5-point favorite in that game, ironically, but they ended up winning substantially, 76-51 at home. Big win for the Buckeyes. Where's that Purdue score? I'm looking. What's it?
Purdue lost 65-55.
To Marquette. Was that at home, I'm assuming?
I think it was. Pretty sure.
There it is. They were on the road. Marquette was actually a 2.5-point favorite in that game, so not a huge surprise. It's not like it was an upset. Marquette, of course, one of the teams that Dawson Garcia has narrowed his choices to be, which is coming here soon. What is today's date? The 14th. So we got 6 days. We're 6 days away from Dawson Garcia's decision on where he's going to play his college basketball. Most people think that is down to Marquette in Indiana. We'll certainly find out. But, yeah.
Yeah, there was one upset. VCU beat number 23 LSU 84-82.
I thought you were going to say Wyoming beat Kentucky. Evansville beat Kentucky.
Well, that was 2 days ago. So
I know, but it's still fresh and delicious. Some things are better as leftovers. You reheat them and you enjoy them again. Man, I made a comment on Twitter that that Kentucky has now lost 3 out of their last 4 games to teams from Indiana. Wasn't quite accurate. We'd find out later. They played a few small Indiana teams in between there. But the point was made. Trust me, I've been getting a barrage of stuff from those Hill Jacks, Kentucky fans. It's still going. And that'll brew for a couple of weeks probably. They don't take losing very well. Which no one likes to lose, but man, they go off the deep end, which they should have. You lose to an Evansville team. That's pretty embarrassing when you're the almost near consensus number one team in the country and you pay a team to come in and smoke your butt on your own home floor. Pretty funny. Yeah, they paid Evansville $90,000 to come beat them as the number one team in the country. So going to enjoy that one for a little bit. Not, I try not to bring any fandom into this. It's not what we do here, but there's one area that's kind of tough to keep out. I'm not a fan of Kentucky. Never have been. Never will be. There's a feeling I'm not the only one like that, man. Not the only one like that. How's your week going? Look forward to getting to the reporter segment today, man. We were off last week because Indiana had a bye, so we skipped the segment in those weeks. But man, looking forward to getting back to that. This is a big game for the Hoosiers, of course. If they could somehow pull this out, that would be a gigantic feather in Tom Allen's cap, and it would take this season to another level of success. I mean, having already won 7 games, bowl eligibility, all that stuff, it's already secured. The next goal, I think, is possibly looking at 9 wins on a season, maybe 10. It is attainable. That is an attainable goal, as crazy as that sounds. And to be honest with you, it should have been more attainable because I don't want to keep talking about that loss to Michigan State because it's just one of those things that gnaws at you. But, yeah, a successful season no matter what for Tom Allen and the Indiana football program. But lots of signings in basketball yesterday. I mentioned volleyball, Steve Aird. We'll get to him later in the show. But the best signing class in Indiana volleyball history. They have 8 signees, including a top 30 player. Here's the funny thing. They have 3 Under Armour All-Americans. And the second highest rated recruit in the program history. The funny thing is, the second highest rated recruit in program history is not a part of the Under Armour All-Americans. It's not. She's high. She's the highest rated recruit, but she didn't make those lists. It's kind of funny how that stuff works sometimes. Ridiculous. But so 3 Under Armour All-Americans plus a top 30 player. Pretty good day for Steve Aird. He was pretty happy. You know, he's been to a lot of places. They've had some big classes before, and he says this is equal to that. He's had a top 10 class before. So congratulations to Steve Aird and the Indiana volleyball program. Indiana basketball, like I said, their commitments, Trey Galloway, Anthony Leo. I have not seen, I'm sure the paperwork has arrived, but now I'm forgetting his name. What's that? Yeah. Mr. Geronimo. I haven't seen if his paperwork has arrived yet. Teams can't talk about specific players until they have that paperwork in hand. Haven't seen that yet, but like I said, I haven't. We were busy doing some other things, so I'm sure that'll pop up. But of course, the big one Indiana's waiting on is the decision on Dawson Garcia, which comes in 6 days. Everyone's looking forward to that. That's going to be a big time announcement, and that would be, it's hard to replace on a scale how big of a recruit Romeo was. You can't. You have to put aside how you think that him being here went. That doesn't matter. It was the actual recruit, and that was just a ginormous signing for Archie Miller. Now, this one, Dawson Garcia, to me personally, I think is more important to him from a roster standpoint, from a team standpoint, from a building of the program standpoint, because he is a needed commodity for this team down low. We'll see how it works out. Hopefully Indiana can get Dawson Garcia in the fold as well. And that would round out that would make this class a pretty nice class. Without a doubt, top 20 class. I'm not sure where it would end up, but Right now, it's just I'm not sure where they're rated right now, but they have 3 4-stars. It's not bad. It's probably already a top 20 class, but this would definitely boost them tremendously. But who cares about the rankings of the class? It would give them pieces in every area of what they need, with one exception, point guard. Again, they have not landed a point guard yet, but Dawson Garcia is someone that Archie Miller really, really needs to get into the fold. So hopefully that'll happen in a couple of weeks. Hey, make sure you hit us up on the text line, 812-269-6367. And don't forget, Saturday night after the basketball game, the IU taking on Troy, 8 o'clock at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. But we have After the Game with Todd Leary coming to you live from Yogi's. As always, looking forward to that, man. Yogi's becoming the place to be. Like I said, there's 3 different IU basketball players in there last night at the same time, just sitting separately, having a bite to eat. And I was sitting there watching the basketball game with John and Scott Laskowski. Enjoyed that. Had a great conversation talking to both those guys. Just very good guys, all of them. Jeff Newton and George Leach, of course, in town for an event Saturday that they're working with their barbecue company, Ooh Wee Barbecue. Man, I keep seeing that stuff online, looking at it, and I am I want to eat that barbecue so bad. It looks so good. It just it looks delicious. But, yeah, check out Ooh Wee Barbecue from George Leach and Jeff Newton, former IU basketball players. I just texted my brother who lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is where these guys live. George Leach is originally from Charlotte, so that's how they ended up doing this down there. But texted my brother, I said, man, you better go check this out. It's good stuff. But they do all the major events for NASCAR. It's wild. We had George on the program yesterday talking about that. That was a great conversation as well. But looking forward to all that and much, much more. Man, we got a great program coming up today. Like I said, looking forward to getting to the Sports Beat Reporters with Dustin Schutte, Dylan Sin, and Elton Hayes as Indiana taking on the Penn State Nittany Lions this week. A lot of people have Indiana written off, but I promise you Penn State is not ignoring Indiana. They've seen what they can do this year, and especially offensively. That's the trouble they had against Minnesota, was a vaunted passing attack, and that's what they'll be facing again with newly nominated Broyles Award nominee Kalen DeBoer, Indiana's assistant coach, offensive coordinator. He is the 3rd Hoosier coach to be nominated for this award, behind Tom Allen in 2016 when he was the defensive coordinator. Mike Hart was nominated. I think that may have been last year as a running backs coach when Stevie Scott had that breakout season. And then, of course, Kalen DeBoer this year. But Kalen DeBoer has been such a difference maker. If you look across the board in every statistical category, Indiana is up about 50 spots, 45 spots in everything, in scoring offense, in red zone offense, in yards per play, just in everything. Every single category has been boosted enormously. So, there's a lot of talk of Tom Allen getting his contract reworked, is deservedly so, and I'm no doubt that'll happen. Fred Glass has not been shy about talking about that happening. But I think also Kalen DeBoer gonna have to give that man a raise to keep him in the fold, because I promise you, there's going to be some programs that may come calling for his services after seeing what he's done at this level. I mean, he did it before. He's done it everywhere he's been, but this is at the highest level. This is in the Big Ten, against Big Ten teams, against the Ohio States, Michigans, the Penn States of the world. So when you have that kind of success, yeah, that travels fast. So hopefully they'll get him taken care of as well and keep him in the fold at least for another season. I'm not, that's the sad thing, is when you get something like that, you know that they're not going to be around terribly long. It's how long can you keep them before he wants to be a head coach. And I'm not sure he'll leave for another OC job. I think that would take something like Florida State or USC, a job of that magnitude to draw him away as an OC. But as far as a head coach, that's what he wants to be. So hopefully they keep him in the fold. But lots coming up here on the program today. Got a text in from Joker. Purdue led Marquette by 18 in that game last night. And I don't know why they didn't have that on the TV. We were watching Ohio State, but Man, an 18-point lead, they cough that up. That's not good. Thanks for the text, Joker. We got a lot more coming up here on the program. Like I said, Indiana Sports Beat reporters are next. Dustin Schutte, Dylan Sin, and Elton Hayes on the Penn State side. Stay tuned. We're back with more from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Indiana Sports Beat Radio back right after this.
With a wink of her eye. Oh, yeah, it was electric. So frantically hectic.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the Golf Club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This is A.J. Moye.
This is Dan Dockett.
Hey, this is Michael Lewis, former Indiana basketball player.
This is Indiana football coach Tom Allen.
This is Jim Coyle with the Indiana Sports Beat. You can always like and follow us on Facebook. Always follow the show rebroadcast on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify. TheDailyHoosier.com is a great place to sign up for each and every day. Or, of course, on 97.7 The Ref in Evansville. For the best recycling and waste removal service, turn to the area's leader, Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling, a homegrown company serving southern Indiana since 1995. Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling serves Floyd, Clark, Harrison, and Washington counties. For excellent service and peace of mind, call Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling today at 812-944-5642. That's 812-944-5642. Keep life sweet with Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling.
I'm Ryan Shaddy, and I'm a Hoosier. As a toddler, you could always find me running around in a cream and crimson onesie and a red IU hat reminiscent of those worn during the world-famous William Tell timeout, shouting, "Go Hoosiers!" Like many other alum, I chose to make Bloomington my home. As a civic and alumni leader, I have become very knowledgeable about our community and would love to share my insights with you as your realtor. Find me on Facebook or call or text me, Ryan Shaddy, with FC Tucker Bloomington Realtors at 765-623-9093.
This is former IU basketball player Derek Elson. Follow the Hoosiers on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. You know what that means. It's time for the Indiana Sports Beat Reporters segment, joined by our good friend Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition. Dustin, how are you, man?
I'm just trying to stay warm, Jim. How are you?
I can't complain, man. Same deal, brother. It's cold. It's cold. I'm not ready for this. Dylan Sin, a good friend up in Fort Wayne. I bet you're a little colder than I am.
Yeah, it is chilly up here. It was in the single digits when I was driving back from Bloomington the other night after the basketball game. It is cold.
And as everybody say hello to our good friend, Sir Elton Hayes from CNHI Penn State, brother. How are you, Elton?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Cannot complain, man. How are things over in Happy Valley?
Good, man. Good. It seems like Penn State hasn't had a home game in forever. The last time they were at home was October 19th. So good to be back at home and covering a game in Beaver Stadium.
Yeah, we'll certainly get that taken care of this week. But before we get to all that, I want to talk about the overall college football playoff picture. Dustin, I'll start with you. Man, I want someone to tell me how in the world they can rank Oregon in front of Minnesota or anybody with a loss in front of Minnesota right now. I'm just not seeing it. I don't care if it's Alabama because Alabama has played no one. They played a weak schedule. All of their wins over every team that they've beaten has at least 3 losses, and they lost at home to LSU. So to me, they're out. Get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit on everything I've been talking about in stories on Twitter, and it just doesn't make much sense to me as to why you'd have Georgia and Alabama in those number 4 and 5 spots, and then you want to talk about teams that don't have signature wins. Well, throw Oregon and Utah in that mix too. So at the very least, what we've seen from Minnesota is now that they got that quality win over Penn State last week. So to me, what else do you want them to do? I mean, they won the 4 previous games by 168-41 was the margin of victory in those combined 4 wins. They get a big home win over number 4 Penn State, and that's more than any of those 4 teams can say. So really right now, the only thing that's keeping Minnesota out of that top 4 is it doesn't have the same brand as a Georgia or Alabama. And you're right, it's not just Alabama and Georgia. It's also, I don't know what Oregon and Utah have done when you talk about a resume. Now, I understand that Oregon's only loss is to a solid Auburn team and that they've beaten everybody in their path pretty easily. But when you talk about strength of schedule, when you talk about teams that have a signature win needing a top 25 win, Minnesota has the resume. Those other 4 teams in front of it just do not right now.
Dylan, as we move forward in this season, what has been the thing that stood out and stands out to you about this season? Anything big or unexpected?
Well, yeah, I think at this point in the season, I'm still wondering. Obviously, you just talked about it, how Minnesota is 9-0, and they're behind several teams that have 1 loss. And I think that's the biggest thing that surprises me at this point in the season. And I've talked about this on Twitter, Dustin talked about this on Twitter, is if Minnesota was wearing Ohio State jerseys the entire year, had the exact same resume, but had been wearing Ohio State jerseys the entire year, I think they would be ranked much higher. I think that kind of goes back to what Dustin said about having a brand. And I think that's the most surprising thing is that the committee is really kind of, they seem to kind of buy into that a little bit. I think that's a little bit disappointing for fans who kind of just want to see them pick the best teams. And I don't think we're really seeing that. I think it's more of, you have a big name, we buy into you a little bit more at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's so SEC top heavy. You've got 3 SEC teams in the top 5. I just don't know how that can be possible when you're playing each other in the conference. And Georgia, man, they barely beat a Notre Dame team that's not that good at home. They have a loss on their resume as well. So I just don't understand how you can put an undefeated team that plays in the Big Ten that just got a win over the number 4 team, how that's possible to put them down, Elton. You would think the Big Ten would carry enough weight, but apparently not for teams that are not named Ohio State or Michigan or even Penn State for that matter.
No, I think it goes back to what Dustin and Dylan said. It's about perception with the committee voters. But, Minnesota's done everything, the committee's asked of it. It's won every game in its schedule. In Big Ten play, it's been dominant. You saw this past weekend, it got a 5-point win over a good Penn State team that was undefeated going into that game. And I don't know what else Minnesota's going to have to get people's attention. But like I said, at the end of the day, it goes back to perception. Minnesota doesn't have that name brand as your Georgias, your Oregon, and they're being unfairly penalized for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Dustin, but to be honest, I think that I'm not sure how many people going into that game last week thought that Minnesota was actually going to beat Penn State, other than people that lived in Minnesota. But man, they looked solid. They showed that they are a solid team. Both sides of the ball, they gave Penn State more than they could handle offensively, obviously. And they did everything they needed to do to win. They didn't luck into that win. It wasn't like some fluke turnover. They won that game handily.
Yeah, and you look, they forced, 3 Penn State turnovers. They jumped out to an early lead in in that game, and they built a 7-0 advantage, and they really played from in front, and that's what you have to do. Penn State all season had been a team that had jumped out to the early lead and had been able to kind of milk the clock against some of these teams, against Michigan State, and get some of those big wins. But when you talk about what Minnesota's done, look, this is a team that came into the season that I thought had a chance to win the Big Ten West. Because of their big offensive line play, because of they had 3 returning running backs who had at one point led the team in rushing. They had the best receivers, I thought, in the Big Ten. So I don't think it's a surprise that Minnesota is good. I think it's a surprise that Minnesota right now is just they're dominating teams right now. And I know the final score, when you look at 31-26, it doesn't look like that Minnesota really dominated that game. But when you go back and watch it, I mean, you're right. Minnesota went out and won. The defense made plays. The offense hit on some big offensive plays there. So that was just a completely dominant performance, I thought, for Minnesota. There were some lags, but again, and I think you go back to even what Dylan and Elton said. If this is a team that's wearing an Ohio State jersey, an Alabama jersey, a Texas A&M jersey, there's no question that Minnesota is considered one of the 4 best teams in the country right now.
Yeah, Dylan, as I look down the list, you see Baylor sitting at number 12 at 9-0. They are sitting behind a Florida team that has lost 2 times. One of those games to South Carolina, who is absolutely just a middle-of-the-road team. So, again, I don't know what this playoff committee looks at really when they're putting this together, because it's like the Heisman to me now. The Heisman used to go to the best player in college football. Well, now it goes to the best player on the perceived best team in college football, because if you're not on that, then you don't make it. And I think that is totally ridiculous. But I'm just not sure what this committee looks at when are they really trying to put the 4 best teams together, or now a lot of people get it confused with most deserving. Is that too much of a problem in perception, do you think?
I think that is a little bit of a problem. I think that they do have kind of an issue with who do we want to put in and who has the name brand. We talked about that a little bit already. I think what we have to remember, though, is that these rankings that come out before the final ranking are more about driving discussion than anything else. Obviously, I'm not accusing the committee of just putting together rankings that are going to get people talking the most, but before the final rankings, before the ones that actually matter, these prior ones are all about driving discussion and seeing what can get people talking. So we have to be careful of getting too worked up about it, because that's something that it doesn't ultimately matter. And if Minnesota wins out, they're going to be in. But it is good to kind of maybe give them some bulletin board material and say, hey, still nobody believes in us even after we beat Penn State.
Elton, with Alabama sitting in that 4th spot, knowing that they're not going to play anybody of magnitude for the rest of the season, and they will not be in the SEC championship game, someone's going to have to move them down. And for Penn State, they're sitting 4 or 5 spots below them. What does Penn State have to do to get up there back into this conversation, or is it even a possibility for them?
Well, no, I think it starts this week. They get a number 24 ranked Indiana team. 7 wins this year. They can get past Indiana. I think it all boils back down to that November 23rd showdown in Columbus with Ohio State. Ohio State dropped to number 2 in the rankings. I understand LSU beat Alabama, but I still don't know what I think about dropping the team that won, but that's a topic for another day. But, I think Penn State can make up a lot of ground if it goes out there and beats Ohio State in a couple weeks. They got Rutgers to close out the regular season, and if everything shakes out the way it can, or the way it's looking like it will, then Penn State will match up back against Minnesota in the Big Ten championship game. If Penn State can win that, then I think there's absolutely a possibility of them getting back into the playoff picture.
Dustin, I have to be honest and say how weird it is to hear a Penn State writer talk about if Penn State can get past a 24th ranked Indiana team. Just on his face to hearing that, it's not something you hear every day with Indiana football.
No, and that's kind of a sign of the times that are changing right now. Right now, Indiana's people are starting to buy into this Indiana team and recognizing that this isn't just some sort of fluke season. This isn't just a nice Indiana team that can be dangerous. This is a team that can go in to Happy Valley. Tom Allen said it earlier this week. If you don't believe you can go in and win in Happy Valley for the first time in program history, then don't get on the bus. I mean, this is a team that not only is a good team with some really good weapons, especially on the offensive side of the football. This is a team that it's gaining momentum. Like, it's a locomotive that continues to pick up steam as the season goes on. I mean, to me, the most dangerous thing about this Indiana team was it getting its 6th win against Nebraska, because right now it has nothing to lose. It's not going to win the Big Ten East. It's probably not going to go to a New Year's Six Bowl, although it maybe could work its way into that discussion if it wins out here. But this is a team with absolutely nothing to lose. They don't have the pressure of having to earn that 6th victory. So this is a very dangerous Indiana team. And like I said, they're believing more than anything. And we've heard all week, this is a team that's not satisfied. They're still hungry for more. They want to get to maybe 8, 9, maybe even 10 wins this year.
Yeah, and Dylan, this Indiana team has done this with 2 different quarterbacks and almost in tandem equally. They almost up to this point had the same amount of yardage, throws. They've almost played equal time because of injuries to Michael Penix. And obviously now with him lost to the season after having to get surgery after his most recent injury, it falls back to Peyton Ramsey. But the offense has not dropped off with him in there. The biggest knock on him is he was not able to go deep, which is why he lost the job to begin with. But this Kalen DeBoer offense has been like a machine gun to defenses when they come out. You don't know where the ball is going, who's going to get it, or what the play is going to be. He's done such a great job. He was recently nominated for the Broyles Award as a top assistant in the country. But this offense has been quite the turnaround for the Hoosiers.
Absolutely. And I mean, it kind of speaks to what can happen when you invest in football, which we've been pushing Indiana to do for years and years and years, saying if you put money into it, you're going to get results. And they went out. They paid Kalen DeBoer, one of the highest paid assistants in the Big Ten. He went out and he has done a very good job, and he has rebuilt this offense and made it explosive. And so that's the thing, is Indiana has finally gone out and invested in football the way that fans have kind of been asking it to for years and years, and that is paying off. And so, Kalen DeBoer has been great. He's really helped Peyton Ramsey take his game to the next level, and it helps that he has receivers and weapons all over the place on the outside. So yeah, it's tough for Indiana that Michael Penix is out for the year, but Ramsey has shown that he has the confidence of the rest of his team. And I think that's the most important part here, is that the team believes in him. And so that's why they believe that they can still go into Penn State and win, even with Ramsey.
Elton, everybody talks about having to play Penn State now, coming off of that loss. You know, and at the end of the day, I'm not sure that really changes whether or not their desire to win this game. It doesn't matter if they lost that game last week or not. It's going to be a formidable task for Indiana to come into Happy Valley, because you got 100,000 people there. It's I've never been to that stadium, but I know when you get 100,000 people, it's a loud environment, and that's a weapon for them. But Indiana has shown that they can play in those environments. They played well up at East Lansing. They played obviously well at Nebraska. What does Penn State have to do specifically on the field this week in this game?
I mean, I think it's going to be to contain the pass. This year, Penn State secondary is susceptible to it. Buffalo's quarterback had a really good game against the secondary. Pittsburgh quarterback Kenny Pickett, I believe, threw for 372 yards. We saw what happened last week with Tanner Morgan, won 18 of 20 for 339 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's crazy. He had 2 incompletions for 3 touchdowns. But I think if Indiana's going to come in here and be successful like in the season, it's going to have to do it through the air, which it's shown it's capable of doing. I don't think it matters whether you have Penix in there or Ramsey. This offense is clicking. You know, the Big Ten's most productive passing offense. And Penn State's defense this year has shown that it hasn't really fared well against those type of opponents. So we're going to see. Coach Franklin said a couple of days ago that the team got back here on Sunday, watched film, kind of seen this behind them, and they're taking it as a lesson learned. So we'll see if they're going to correct those mistakes on Saturday. If not, it's going to be another long day for that secondary.
Dylan, I think Penn State gets back Noah Cain, and they've got the quarterback Sean Clifford. And ironically, these quarterbacks, Peyton Ramsey and Sean Clifford, they played against each other in high school in Cincinnati. So this is kind of a rematch here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that it goes back to high school. And so that's something that's going to make it a little bit more interesting this weekend. And so there's a little bit of rivalry there. And I think Indiana comes into this game, as we talked about, playing with a lot of confidence. And I think that's the most important part for this team is kind of believing, because in the past, IU has always been, well, we're IU, we're not supposed to win these games. If we go in there and put up a good showing, that's good enough. And I think that this team is kind of trying to rewrite that script and say, that's not good enough. We want to go in there and win. And I think that's the difference to this team. And Tom Allen really has them believing they can do it.
Talking with Dustin Schutte, Dylan Sin, and Elton Hayes here on the Indiana Sports Beat Reporters segment. We've got more coming up for you. We'll be right back after this break.
Next to you, just can't get next to you. Next to you, babe. I can't get next to you. I can fly like a bird in the sky.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the golf club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This is AJ Moye.
This is Dan Dockett.
Hey, this is Michael Lewis, former Indiana basketball player.
This is Indiana football coach Tom Allen.
This is Jim Coyle with the Indiana Sports Beat. You can always like and follow us on Facebook. Always follow the show rebroadcast on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify. TheDailyHoosier.com is a great place to sign up for each and every day, or, of course, on 97.7 The Ref in Evansville. For the best recycling and waste removal service, turn to the area's leader, Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling, a homegrown company serving southern Indiana since 1995. Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling serves Floyd, Clark, Harrison, and Washington counties. For excellent service and peace of mind, call Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling today at 812-944-5642. That's 812-944-5642. Keep life sweet with Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling.
I'm Rain Shaddy, and I'm a Hoosier. As a toddler, you could always find me running around in a cream and crimson onesie and a red IU hat reminiscent of those worn during the world-famous William Tell timeout, shouting, "Go Hoosiers!" Like many other alum, I chose to make Bloomington my home. As a civic and alumni leader, I have become very knowledgeable about our community and would love to share my insights with you as your realtor. Find me on Facebook or call or text me, Ryan Shaddy, with FC Tucker Bloomington Realtors at 765-623-9093.
All right, all you Hoosiers out there, make sure you listen to my main man when it's time to talk about Indiana sports. Jim Coyle. All right.
Today's guest is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, with hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer. Pizza, burgers, beer. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville.
And I won't back down.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday, November 4th. Heading into game day this week as Indiana takes on the Penn State Nittany Lions, joined by Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, Dylan Sin from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, and Elton Hayes from CNHI at Penn State. Guys, thanks again for joining us here on the reporter segment today. We appreciate you. Let's talk a little bit about the weather this weekend. It's going to be cold, but no snow or anything. Dustin, offenses are sometimes affected by the weather. With just being cold, I don't know that that's enough to slow down Indiana's offense from a passing standpoint. So I don't know that it's an advantage either way for either team.
No, and I mean, a couple weeks ago they played in a pretty chilly game, November night game there against Northwestern, and they moved the ball just fine. Obviously, Northwestern's defense isn't at the same standard as Penn State's, but at the same time, you just got to do what Indiana does, and I think they'll be just fine. I don't expect weather. If as long as it's clear, I think Indiana can move the football. It'll be interesting to see. I think with the week off, and you talked earlier in the show about Peyton Ramsey being able to stretch the field, and kind of his inability to do that, at least so far. If they worked on that, if they're going to try to do some quick hitters more often, if they do try to stretch the field every now and then, that'll be something to keep an eye on. But yeah, I don't think weather's going to really affect this passing attack too much. It's been too prolific. They've battled some conditions throughout the season. They've been just fine for every game except the Ohio State game.
Dylan, earlier we were talking about the college football playoffs, and I forgot to mention Indiana, while ranked in both the AP and the coaches poll, did not make the college football playoff poll, which surprised me because if you make the AP poll, man, because it took Indiana was lagging behind the media poll. They obviously didn't feel Indiana was that good until all of a sudden, boom, they jumped up in there. But college football poll left them out. Question from Tim off of texted in Indiana. Well, now you changed the question, Tim. But does that disrespect give them a reason to play better? I don't think that any of that stuff really does at the end of the day, but it's always in the back of your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to what we said earlier about them kind of going more with, at this point in the season, with brand name rather than what you kind of seen on the field. They're more eye test rather than anything else. And I think I also saw something on Twitter about how Indiana wasn't really even under discussion for the CFP poll, which was a little bit interesting that they didn't even really consider putting them in at that point, which was surprising to me. And that's obviously just more bulletin board material for Indiana and Tom Allen as they try to build their "no one believes in us" case. And I think every little bit of motivation matters when you're going into a game like this against Penn State.
Yeah, Elton, if you look at the numbers, these teams are pretty close offensively. Indiana leads Penn State in passing yards, almost 2,800 to just over 2,300 for Penn State. But on the rushing side, it's kind of the opposite. Penn State leads IU 1,250 to 1,500. So their number, if you put the numbers together, they're pretty close. Just Penn State runs the ball, looks like a little bit more, and Indiana obviously passes the ball a lot more. But these two teams may be a lot more similar than people think.
No, I think so. I think they're both, they, like you said, the statistics mirror each other. I think where Penn State might have the edge here, and this one is the running game, whereas, Steve Scott has been phenomenal for Indiana. Penn State's had three running backs rotated between the season with Journey Brown, Noah Cain, Devin Ford, and Ricky Slade has kind of been pushed, further down the depth chart. But I think there's something to be said for having all three of those guys able to get in there and split reps and kind of stay fresh and keep the mileage down. Noah Cain was banged up against Michigan State. He did not play at all against Minnesota last week. But Franklin said yesterday he was about 90%, that he felt that the three other running backs with 100%, he felt better about playing them than playing a 90% Noah Cain. But, I expect Noah Cain to play again on Saturday, and it'll be interesting to see how they continue to use that running back rotation.
And Dustin, as we look at we talked about perceptions and all that. I haven't seen the spread again lately, but the last I saw it was about 14.5. That's a pretty daggone big spread right there. That does not show me that Las Vegas is having a lot of respect for Indiana going into this game.
Yeah, and we keep harping on it, right? It's because Indiana's on the front of the jersey. But I think when you look at what maybe Penn State has done, and compared to what Indiana has done, when you just stack resumes side by side, I mean, Penn State has beaten Michigan State. They did beat Iowa. They did beat Michigan. So they've beaten some good teams, and you can nitpick and say Indiana doesn't have maybe quite that resume. But I still think the 14.5 points is too much, especially when you consider really how prolific this offense is. I expect this game to definitely be a shootout, maybe more so than one that Penn State has played in this season. But I don't know that people are still buying into the fact that Indiana can score offensively. Like they've scored on some decent defenses this season. They did well against Northwestern. They hung 38 on a Nebraska defense that I know at times has struggled, but at other times has looked pretty decent. So I think the 14.5, 2 touchdowns, I think that's way too much. But again, I think when you look at Penn State, Indiana, I think when bettors see that, they're like, they don't really account for what has gone on this season. They may just be looking at, the tradition of Penn State, the history, the 8-1 record, who they've beaten, as opposed to Indiana, again, falling under that nice story category, and expecting Penn State to take care of business at home.
Yeah, Dylan, this Indiana team, when it comes down to this game, I don't think the Indiana's offense is going to be stopped. So their offense is not going to be, I don't think the difference maker in this game, whether or not Indiana can win, that's going to fall on their defense. Indiana's defense has got to rise up. They've got to play the best game they have played all season without doubt, and they've got to contain or somewhat stymie, some way, the running attack by this Penn State team.
Exactly, and that's something that Indiana has. Penn State has athletes all over the field on offense, and that's the biggest issue for Indiana. Is over the years, when they play these good teams, can they match up athletically? Because over the years, they really haven't had the athletes, and they're finally starting to get guys like that in the program. Guys like Tywan Mullen and guys like that are finally in the program, and they can match up with some of these top teams and go toe to toe with them athletically. Penn State is a different animal in that category. They are maybe the most athletic team Indiana has faced this year, outside of Ohio State, who just is loaded at every position. But when you look at Penn State offensively and Indiana trying to slow them down, it's, can you match up with the speed on the outside? I think that's going to be the number one issue for Indiana, is slowing down that Penn State speed, trying to stay with them, trying to hold on to them. I think that's going to be one of the things that really decides whether this game ends up being close or ends up Penn State kind of running away with it.
Excuse me for forgetting Elton, but what's the top receiver for Penn State? Is it Hamler?
KJ Hamler, yes.
Yeah, looking for this matchup between Hamler, because there's no doubt Indiana is going to put Tywan Mullen on him, their best cover guy. He's a true freshman, by the way, but is having a spectacular season, and no doubt that's the guy that they're going to put on him, and that's going to be a matchup that I think goes a long way in how well Penn State's offense can do that. Obviously, they've got a great running game, but to get their passing game going, they're going to have to get – this matchup is going to be one to look at.
It is. And, Hamler's been automatic all year. I believe he's caught a pass in every game that he's played in Penn State, at Penn State. He's up to 23 consecutive receptions. And last week, although he didn't find the end zone, he still finished with over 100 yards receiving on 7 catches. He's by far quarterback Sean Clifford's favorite target. And the offense goes as he goes. It's going to be interesting to see if Mullins is able to shut him down. You got a guy like Pat Freiermuth, who is one of the top tight ends in the league, if not the country, to see what role he plays. But Freiermuth's another solid option at tight end that Clifford's really comfortable throwing to. And a couple other guys on that Penn State receiving floor, Jahan Dotson and Daniel George.
All right, Dustin, when it comes down to the game time, what do you see happening in this game? Do you think that the Indiana can go in? Is their defense, will it be strong enough? Again, I don't think offensively they're going to have a problem. I think Penn State showed that they're already susceptible to the pass, and Indiana may be, if not the best, absolutely probably the second best passing attack in the Big Ten. Is Indiana's defense grown enough that they can go in to Beaver Stadium in Happy Valley in front of 100,000 people and get what would, to me, be the biggest win in Indiana football history? You forget the Rose Bowl season. In modern day times, that would be the biggest win ever. Can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that shocked us from really the start of the season, right? I mean, I don't think I would put anything past, or I wouldn't be surprised by any result we see in Happy Valley this weekend. And I don't know necessarily that Indiana's defense has to completely shut down Penn State. I think that this game, like I said, I think it's going to be a shootout. And at times this season, you saw it last week, and you saw it, even at times in the Iowa game. Sean Clifford has been prone to make mistakes. He's still a first-year starting quarterback. And I think if Indiana can get a few interceptions, if they can force a fumble here or there, if they can make one or two big plays, you saw it last week. Let's go to the Illinois-Michigan State game. You saw Michigan State have a 28-3 lead, and Illinois was able to get a couple big takeaways in the second half and end up coming back from 25 points down. Now, I don't think Indiana would have the talent to overcome that kind of deficit. I do think the Hoosiers need to jump out like Minnesota did a week ago, get an early lead, and continue to fire on all cylinders. But if you can make one or two big plays in this game, if you can get a pick six, if you can get an interception or a turnover in Penn State territory, I think the Hoosiers will have enough offense to kind of hold Penn State at bay and get a win from Happy Valley. Now, saying that is one thing, doing it is a completely different thing. But we've seen the last couple of weeks, Indiana has gotten a lot better at getting takeaways. Now you've got to do it against one of the big boys up in Happy Valley. It's not an easy task. But again, this is a team with absolutely nothing to lose. They're coming off a bye week. They've shocked us all season. So I expect a really hard-fought, close game. And I think Indiana's defense is more than capable of coming up with 2 or 3 big plays in that game to get a win and shock the world.
Dylan, to follow up on what Dustin just said, I mean, to me, that's the difference in this ball game. For Indiana to win, they have to get turnovers. It can't be if they don't. I don't see that they can get this done. We saw what happened against Minnesota. That's exactly what they did. They forced them into some turnovers, and that was the difference in the game because that was a close game. Without those turnovers, Minnesota doesn't win that game, and I cannot imagine Indiana having any chance of winning this game on the road without getting multiple turnovers in this game.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think what Dustin said is exactly right. They have to get those turnovers, and that's the thing. Not only are those turnovers kind of big for the psyche of a team, saying like they stop momentum for Penn State, but it's something that we saw almost a little bit against Northwestern. Obviously, completely different quality of opponent. But when Indiana played Northwestern a few weeks ago, Northwestern was moving the ball a little bit, and Indiana got some turnovers, shut them down, and then they went down and scored. And those type of plays can flip the field, they can turn the momentum of the game around. And I think that's what you have to have happen on the road. To kind of quiet the crowd, take them out of the game. And I think that's what Indiana is going to have to do. And I mean, they've been preaching that. We saw it when we went. We were all down there at fall camp. They were preaching: get turnovers, get takeaways, get to the ball when it's on the ground. And I think we've seen that play out this season, and that's going to be a huge part of the defensive game plan this week.
Elton, from a Penn State perspective, what is their biggest concern, and how do you expect this game to play out?
Like I said, the biggest concern is the one that's been all season long, kind of stopping that pass. Penn State's run defense, I believe, is still fifth in the nation. Teams are not moving the ball on the ground against them. Minnesota did well. I'll give Minnesota credit. But, stopping the pass is going to be the biggest concern. That's where they've had their biggest problems this year. And that's something that Franklin mentioned that Jonathan Sutherland, we talked to him yesterday after practice of safety, he said that the focus is kind of fixing those mental errors and correcting those mistakes. I think that if Indiana continues to be successful as it's done all year on the through the air against this defense, Penn State's going to be in for another long day. But turnovers, as the Dylan and Dustin mentioned, are also going to be key. Minnesota was able to get at those turnovers early, kind of take Penn State out of its rhythm, which it's done all year, is just kind of score points early and often on games to kind of get that lead. And Minnesota was able to prevent that from happening, and it served them well. I think Indiana's going to follow the same blueprint. Force turnovers and continue to attack that secondary. And if Indiana can do that, I think it might bode well for their chances for a win.
Absolutely. Dustin, all right, it's time. Give me a prediction. How do you see this game actually ending up?
That's a great question. I actually think we have a good game. I think Penn State has just enough offense. I know I picked the Hoosiers a lot on this show, but I think Penn State wins this game. I'll go with the final score of maybe somewhere 37-34 Penn State.
Yeah,
Dylan, you're up, brother.
I do something similar. Yeah, I do something similar. I'd say Penn State maybe pulls away a little bit in the second half, and Indiana keeps it close early. Penn State pulls away at the end. Just too much talent right now for this Hoosiers team. I'll go 35-23.
All right, Elton, you're on the clock.
I think it's going to follow last year's theme. Close game through the first half. I think Penn State turns it around, gets a score late to win. Penn State 28, Indiana 21.
Indiana has been so close. Last year they were close to winning that game against Penn State. Probably should have won that game, to be honest with you. But right now they stand, I think, 1-23 in this series, or 1-21 in this series. They won once, and that was, I think, in 2013 or so. Man, I hate to be the homer. I'm not trying to be, but since no one else picked them, I guess I'll go with the Hoosiers for the monumental upset, 38-37 in Happy Valley. How's that?
I love it.
Sounds good. I'm making a note of it.
Oh, yeah, thanks a lot. You can always bring that back up when it doesn't come true. Guys, I can't thank you enough, man. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, I thank you as always. We greatly appreciate you coming on with us each week. Love your insight. Make sure you follow Dustin on Twitter. If you're not, Saturday Tradition covers all the Big Ten football, complete coverage there for those guys. Dustin, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jim, and we'll do it again next week.
You bet. Our good friend Dylan Sen from Fort Wayne, the Journal-Gazette, man, he does a great job covering several teams, but including the Indiana Hoosiers. We always love having Dylan. Dylan's an AP voter, by the way, and I forgot to bring that up. Yeah, you're voting the AP. The AP poll versus the college football poll and the differences there. Are you surprised by that?
I am a little bit. I think the difference is the College Football Playoff Committee spends time watching almost every single game. That's kind of what their job is. The AP poll, it's all writers who are covering a specific team, so they only get bits and pieces of certain games. I think that kind of colors the perception of certain teams a little bit. If you see more of the highlights as an AP voter, so that's something that I think is kind of the biggest issue there. But it is a little bit surprising to see the differences in the polls.
Sir Elton Hayes, a good friend from CNHI at Penn State, brother. It's so good to have you on, man. I look forward to I thought I was going to see you this weekend, but it'll have to be another time.
No, man, it's disappointing, but hey, thanks for having me on. As always, it's a pleasure catching up with you.
You bet, guys. Thank you very much. We appreciate you, and we'll do it again next week with Indiana Sports Beat reporters. Thanks a lot. Indiana Sports Beat Radio got a lot more coming up here. We're going to hear from Steve Aird as Indiana signs the best ever class in volleyball, the signings in basketball, obviously as well. Plenty to get to in that regard, but we're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios right after this. Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the Golf Club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This is A.J. Moye.
This is Dan Dockett.
Hey, this is Michael Lewis, former Indiana basketball player.
This is Indiana football coach Tom Allen.
This is Jim Coyle with the Indiana Sports Beat. You can always like and follow us on Facebook. Always follow the show rebroadcast on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify. TheDailyHoosier.com is a great place to sign up for each and every day. Or, of course, on 97.7 The Ref in Evansville. For the best recycling and waste removal service, turn to the area's leader, Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling, a homegrown company serving southern Indiana since 1995. Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling serves Floyd, Clark, Harrison, and Washington counties. For excellent service and peace of mind, call Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling today at 812-944-5642. That's 812-944-5642. Keep life sweet with Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling.
I'm Rain Shaddy, and I'm a Hoosier. As a toddler, you could always find me running around in a cream and crimson onesie and a red IU hat reminiscent of those worn during the world-famous William Tell timeout, shouting, "Go Hoosiers!" Like many other alum, I chose to make Bloomington my home. As a civic and alumni leader, I have become very knowledgeable about our community and would love to share my insights with you as your realtor. Find me on Facebook or call or text me, Ryan Shaddy, with FC Tucker Bloomington Realtors at 765-623-9093.
Hey, this is Jordan Halls, former Indiana Hoosier. Keep up with Indiana sports on Indiana Sports Beat.
Lukenbach, Texas, William Whalen and Boyd. This successful life.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Like the Hatfields and
country.
the Boys.
Here on this Thursday, just wrapped up Indiana Sports Beat Reporters segment that we do every Thursday. Love that. And most people seem to enjoy it as well. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, and a good friend, Sir Elton Hayes from CNHI at Penn State joined us today as we talked about Indiana's impending game at Happy Valley on Saturday at noon. It's a big game, man. I'll be at Yogi's watching that one, unfortunately. I planned on being in Happy Valley, but Indiana with the basketball game Saturday night against Troy at the Simon Scott Assembly Hall at 8. And we have the after the game with Todd Leary coming to you live from Yogi's afterwards. Forced me to stay in town, unfortunately, but be looking forward to doing that. So that's a good thing is I get to be at Yogi's since I can't be at Penn State. But, man, had dinner there yesterday, as a matter of fact. That was awesome. If you haven't been there, you need to get out there. Looking forward to that. Signing day, big day yesterday for the Indiana Hoosiers volleyball program. Steve Aird. That's still not up there yet, Jake. But they signed 8 players in this class. We couldn't talk about yesterday they had the press conference with Steve talking about all this, but he could not talk about Morgan Geddes, who was one of those top 8 players, because she had sent her paperwork in, but the compliance office, people at the compliance office at IU had left early. So they could not confirm. It took them, because I ended up getting a text message later, or a message that they received it. But it took them that long to confirm that paperwork was there. I don't know if they had to have someone go in there and literally go into the office after hours and see, is this fax here? Because they literally cannot talk about a player until they have the signed paperwork in hand. But, man, what a great class for Steve Aird. It's probably not loaded yet, so I'm going to go ahead and play it myself here. That I have it here, Jake, so you don't have to worry about it. Steve Aird talking yesterday about this class.
Part of this is off of memory, but I've been doing this a long time. You know, in the 20 years I've been around it, this is as good a class as I've seen at a lot of places. I mean, at Penn State, we had the number 1 class in the country before I left, and that organization and that program has great classes consistently. My last 2 classes at Maryland were, I think, 16th and 9th, and they were exceptional. I think this is going to be in the same conversation as those.
I want to talk about Tommy real quick.
Yeah.
So she was committed to USC, and then some changes happened there, and she decommitted. When did she first pop up on your radar? What was the movie her?
Well, I mean, we've known about her for a really long time because she's one of the nation's best players, and she was one of the first kids ever to commit to USC to play beach and indoor. I mean, she's just a phenomenal volleyball player. And then things got more serious probably in our preseason. I think she was looking at trying to find a good fit. So we do what we do. We communicated with her and got to know her, got to know the family. And she came and visited, and I think fell in love with all of it. I think the culture that we're developing and the school, the opportunity to compete in the conference. Dad was a great football player, quarterback at UNLV, and the family is phenomenal. So I think they were just looking for the right fit. And yeah, it's a little bit different than SC, and SC's got a storied program, but it's like anything else. A lot of people look at stuff like that, and they'll look at some of the other kids who've committed, and they'll be shocked for a year. And then next year they won't be. And then 3 years from now, if we get a top 10 class, it'll be, well, it's just what happens. But there's always that initial first shock where people are like, oh, what's going on there? So it's fun when it happens because you know it's coming. And then when the day arrives, it's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, what's going on there? I'll tell you what's going on there is the best class in school history. Talking about Tommy Stockham, who he's talking about there. She is from Las Vegas, Nevada. And that's another thing about this class that they signed. They're from all over the place. La Jolla, California, Colleyville, Texas, Silverdale, Washington, Las Vegas, Nevada, Grove City, Ohio, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, Winnetka, Illinois, Crown Point, Indiana. They got them from everywhere. Man, they're going to all depths to get this job done. So no doubt that program is going to be one of the tops in the country, not soon, in short order. And that's a difficult thing to do because if you don't follow that sport, volleyball, the Big Ten, probably the toughest conference without question in the country. You've got some programs, Penn State, Nebraska, Wyoming, Minnesota. These are all top programs. It's crazy how good the volleyball is in the Big Ten. I would have not until I started covering them. I would have never imagined that because I didn't follow collegiate volleyball. But I would not have picked the Big Ten to be the toughest conference. I would have figured the somewhere on the West Coast or any warm weather schools conference types. That's usually how that follows, but that's not the case at all here. So congratulations to Steve Aird and those guys. Obviously basketball signees as well, Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal, Jordan Geronimo. Indiana picked up those three guys. They were still waiting for the big one, Dawson Garcia. That decision coming in 6 days from now. It was widely thought that that's when the announcement was going to come. I think he had said that before. I think he may have said by the 20th previously, but I think his dad sent something out either within the last day or so that said that decision will come on the 20th. And many people think that decision is down to Indiana and Marquette. I don't know that you can discount Minnesota in that yet. And there's also other teams involved, bigger teams. I think Arizona and Kansas maybe or North Carolina involved in it as well. But you're not hearing about them. North Carolina has a ton of guys at his position. Kansas they got some issues. So, but you know what? Sometimes they don't care. People don't care about issues. You look at what's going on at LSU. They're still able to get some recruits going on there with Wade White being under intense NCAA scrutiny for obvious cheating allegations, and it's not slowed them down much at all. So, but we'll see how that goes. But Indiana fans really waiting to see what Dawson Garcia is going to do, and with good reason. That would be a crown jewel to this class. Don't mistake that by any means. And as a matter of fact, it would be the second biggest recruit Archie has signed to this point. As far as importance, it would be impact, or as far as importance, to me, it's the second biggest recruit behind Romeo. It doesn't matter how Romeo's situation turned out. I'm talking about the actual landing that kid. What that did for Indiana is still not going to be surpassed by landing Dawson Garcia. Although on the floor, I think that Dawson Garcia could have a bigger impact on this team than Romeo did when he came in. So this could be the biggest impact recruit that Archie has signed to date, if you want to really get down to it, on what he can bring to the team and offer as on the floor, because he is going to be a much needed commodity if they can land him, because by the time he gets here, when he's a freshman, there's going to be the guys in front of him that will be leaving, with the exception of Trace Jackson Davis, who we don't know if he'll be here or not 3 years from now, because we've already seen, we knew he was a good player coming in, and he is certainly not disappointed. Man, in the first 3 games of his collegiate career, he has already been spectacular. He's won the gold jersey in practice. I think it's either 3 out of the 4 weeks they've done it, or 4 out of 5. He's only not won it once. So that tells you a lot as well. He's a freshman, and he's going in there and he's beating out the veterans. His performance on the floor has been nothing less than spectacular. Of course, most recently, the other night, he went to the free throw line 15 times and hit 14 of those. A great performance, 20 points. Nearly had another double-double with 8 rebounds. He had a double-double the game before that in just his second collegiate game. So Trace Jackson Davis is not someone I would expect to be here longer than 2 years, possibly. I hope that's not the case, but I'm talking in reality, man. This is realistic. This is just the real-life situation. So that's why getting Dawson Garcia is so important for Archie, because he could be one of the few, the proud, the only ones left besides Race Thompson when he is here for that. So looking forward to finding out how that's going to go. And that happens on the 20th. 6 days from now. So a lot of Indiana fans are waiting for that inherently. Another text into the show. This is from Tim. Anthony Leal was saying he feels pretty good about Garcia committing to IU. He said he had a very good time on his visit. Yeah, of course, you know that they're not going to say anything other than that. They're not going to say, I don't feel good about it, or I don't think he's coming. They're going to keep the positive vibes up. But to point, Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway, they played with him. They're good friends. So I think that is an advantage. I think that it does bode well for Indiana. Indiana being Indiana bodes well for Indiana. The facilities, the crowd. I mean, when he was recently on, he did a kind of an online thing with somebody, and it just, the fact that the Indiana fan base dominated that online deal with how many fans were on there. And it even, the guy that does those tipped in edits is what he was on, but even he was blown away by the AIU fan base, how they reached out. So that kind of surprised me, with as much as he is kind of knows the Indiana fan base. So that just says how badly the fan base wants Dawson Garcia. They would love nothing more than that. And with good reason. Like I've said, he will be, I think he may be the biggest impact recruit. Well, with the exception of Trace Jackson Davis, I keep saying that. And I conveniently forget and then talk about how great Trace Jackson's doing. So second biggest, I'm going to put him behind Trace. I forget since Trace is already here, but man, the importance of landing him, it's huge. Don't take it any other way. It's big. If they don't get him, I think there are serious problems. Indiana's going to have to go a different route. They're going to have to get some guys in via grad transfer, JUCO, something. But they're going to have to do something if it doesn't happen. So hopefully it does. But I'm going to be interested to see where that ends up putting Indiana's recruiting class, because it would definitely vault it up quite highly, possibly into a top 10 recruiting class, which would be good for Archie Miller, as we all know, going forward. I think that's all the text we have right now. Hey, we got a lot more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Stay tuned. We're back with plenty more from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios right after this.
If you want to destroy my sweater, hold this thread as I walk away.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the Golf Club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This is AJ Moye.
This is Dan Dockett.
Hey, this is Michael Lewis, former Indiana basketball player.
This is Indiana football coach Tom Allen.
This is Jim Coyle with the Indiana Sports Beat. You can always like and follow us on Facebook. Always follow the show rebroadcast on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify. TheDailyHoosier.com is a great place to sign up for each and every day. Or, of course, on 97.7 The Ref in Evansville. For
For the best recycling and waste removal service, turn to the area's leader, Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling, a homegrown company serving southern Indiana since 1995. Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling serves Floyd, Clark, Harrison, and Washington counties. For excellent service and peace of mind, call Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling today at 812-944-5642. That's 812-944-5642. Keep life sweet with Sweetland Waste Removal and Recycling.
I'm Rain Shaddy, and I'm a Hoosier. As a toddler, you could always find me running around in a cream and crimson onesie and a red IU hat reminiscent of those worn during the world-famous William Tell timeout, shouting, "Go Hoosiers!" Like many other alum, I chose to make Bloomington my home. As a civic and alumni leader, I have become very knowledgeable about our community and would love to share my insights with you as your realtor. Find me on Facebook or call or text me, Ryan Shaddy, with FC Tucker Bloomington Realtors at 765-623-9093.
This is former IU basketball player Derek Elson. Follow the Hoosiers on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Yeah, the Indiana Sports Beat reporters earlier, Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal and Gazette, and Elton Hayes from CNHI Penn State joined us. If you missed that, you can go back and listen to it afterwards on the podcast. Once the show's over, we rebroadcast it as a podcast, and you can find it wherever you find podcasts, Indiana Sports Beat, there for you. Basketball last night, a couple of interesting games. The Buckeyes of Ohio State handed it to number 10 Villanova handily. They were comfortably out in front of that game by 20 most of the game, and that's about where that game ended. Purdue with a loss at Marquette last night. After leading that game by 18 points, so I'm sure that Matt Painter not happy at all today with what went on there with his squad last night. We've been talking a lot of football today as Indiana prepares to take on Penn State this weekend. We'll be talking a lot of basketball tomorrow with the Todd Father. Todd Leary joins us. And don't forget, Saturday, the Hoosiers take on Troy at 8 o'clock at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. Afterwards, after the game with Todd Leary coming to you live from Yogi's. Feel free to join us at Yogi's after the game. If you're not going to the game, come out, watch the game, stick around for the post-game show. Or if you are going to the game, just stop by afterwards. It's easy to get to right there on Walnut. So it's like 5 minutes from the hall, so not a problem getting over there. And we talked about the signees for Indiana basketball, Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal. Their paperwork is in. Jordan Geronimo, he is set to sign on November 18th at his school. So doing a little presentation, I guess, there for him. So that's good. And I've talked about back to football, Kalen DeBoer, Indiana's offensive coordinator, who has done a masterful job this year, nominated for the Broyles Award, which is pretty prestigious. He's one of 41 nominees of the 2019 Broyles Award. Frank Broyles, obviously, I think he was from Arkansas back in the day. DeBoer serves as the offensive coordinator, assistant head coach. He joins Tom Allen in 2016 and Mike Hart in 2018 for the third Hoosier nominated for that in the last 4 years. He joined the program in the offseason last year. He's been instrumental, obviously, in this 7-2 record. The Hoosiers are bowl eligible for the third time in 5 years and clinched their first winning season since 2007. So what a deal. But here's the reason. Indiana is first in the Big Ten in passing offense at 308 yards a game. That's 15th nationally. They are second in total offense at 446 yards a game. That's 34th nationally. Sacks allowed, 1 per game. They have allowed the least amount of sacks in the Big Ten. That is a big, big stat, folks. A very big stat. That's 26th nationally. Completion percentage, 69.6. Ironically, I guess that's nationally. They're 8th in that, but first in the Big Ten. First in the Big Ten in first downs at 24 a game, 20th nationally. Time of possession, they're 7th in the country. Yards per attempt. It's just everything, every category. I talked about this earlier. Indiana has jumped like 45 spots in each of these categories because of Kalen DeBoer. So he deservedly nominated for this award. Got the chance to talk to Kalen.
What our schedule was like last week, and thought the guys continued to show that they want to bring it every practice and improve, and today was a good introductory day for Penn State. So I'm excited about the challenge. It's obviously a great one for our team as well as our offense, and I know the guys are excited about it as well. Any questions?
So Coach Allen has talked about in the past the ambiguity for the opponent not knowing which quarterback you guys were going to throw at him. Obviously, Penn State knows it's going to be Peyton Ramsey now. So how do you feel like Peyton will handle that challenge, and do you do anything yourself to try to make him less predictable or, different than what they've seen on film previously?
Yeah, no, I think we're to the point in the season where, they've seen enough on Peyton to kind of know. And, every week we always bring different wrinkles to the table, no matter who the quarterback's going to be. And that's just part of our game planning. And so we'll continue to do that. But, there certainly won't be a question on who's going to be playing. I think that's a positive for us, too. When you put yourself in Peyton's shoes and him knowing, and preparing. And he's had that a couple times, but for the most part, he's had to just be ready, in case. And so I know he's going to do everything. He knows how to prepare. He's been in these positions before, and he's prepared in a great way and be ready to go and have our offense ready to go on Saturday.
At every school that you've coached at, the offense in the first year has had a pretty significant jump in the total offense, and obviously that's been the case here as well. How have you been able to execute that now that we're most way through this season?
Yeah, I think it takes a little bit, I think, every year, but I just try to get a feel of what our guys are capable of doing, what their strengths are. And, you install your concepts in spring ball and in fall camp, and you try to get them to understand. But, a lot of it's just them being confident in what we're doing. And you're going to see that the players make plays. And there's not a magic formula, but there's just things that we do that our guys believe in, and they also, I think, understand the adjustments and the answers that we have within our system that we can go to, whether it's throughout the course of a game or from week to week, depending on the team we're playing and what their style, what their defense presents. But I think it's just we work on fundamental things, taking care of the football and placement of the ball, when we're throwing it to where there can be yards after catch and understanding the landmarks we're trying to get to, and just the confidence, the details that we're preaching each and every day. And that falls on the staff too. The staff has been awesome with those details. And I go to bed at night knowing that, the things we talked about, we'll talk about today, are going to be coached up extremely well tomorrow in those meetings with our players. And because of the confidence, or because of the success we've had, the players are just looking for, they want to be coached. They just have responded and made plays in big moments, and just continue to build on that confidence and success we've had.
Coach, a big part of Peyton's game is to be able to take off and run now and again, but he's had some pretty massive wallops to him this year too. Now that Mike's out and he's the guy you need to rely on, trial it for 60 minutes. I mean, does it affect like how often you'd want him running or anything like that at all?
Yeah, I think it's in the back of your mind, but some of the hits are when you're stationary back there in the pocket, throwing the football. And I know that there's been a couple. I think of the Maryland run he had where he took off and scrambled, and so thinking about some of the biggest hits he's had have been in the past game where he's had to make something happen or standing in there in the pocket. So that's his style of play, and it's who we are. We obviously got to be careful. I think anytime where I've been, we've tried to keep the quarterback carries minimal, unless if that's truly the style of quarterback that person is, which I've had once or twice throughout the years. But, you get 7 to 8 carries a game. A couple are on scrambles, a couple zone reads or power reads, and, you want the rest of the skill players being the guys that handle the ball. So not much changes there, but certainly we do have to be conscious of that, limited in the number of hits he takes, for sure.
How much did the personnel that Indiana had already, or the potential of those guys, have to do with you taking on the OC opportunity that was given to you here? I mean, just looking at the roster, did that have a lot to do with it?
Yeah, I think number one is I came into a place where I trusted the coaches and started with Coach Allen. Believing in the people and just really, as you talk to them, hearing, how close we are, and then turning on the film and seeing, okay, these guys can make some plays. There's some plays that are being made, and we're young, but we continue to stay the course like we are right now. There's potential to do some big things, and so you vet all that out, when you're going through the process. But I think a lot of it just, to me, was making sure that I was around good people, and I'm around Coach Allen. I'm around a coaching staff that just has a ton of energy. Guys that enjoy being around each other, enjoy coming to work each day. And when that happens, you put everything into your job and you enjoy being there. Great things happen because it filters on down to the players. They see the camaraderie, the chemistry amongst the staff, and now they share it and have it as well.
Jack Tuttle, how did he handle the increased reps and practice and your comfort level with him now as he kind of elevates to the backup role with Mike Beamer?
Yeah, no, he definitely has gotten – he gets very few throughout the course of a week as far as with the whole team, with the whole offense. I thought last week was really a good week for him. I think he really settled in more than anything and, understands where he's at now and that he needs to be, the guy that's ready to go. But I thought last week was a very successful set of practices for him, and I thought today again, just very consistent, and that's what you want out of any player, is just the consistency and the growth being continued to be there. And I think he's got a kind of peace about him right now in his mind, compared to where he was at earlier when it was competing for a job and all those type of things. I think there's an better understanding of the offense because he puts just as much into it as Michael did and as Peyton does, and he's ready. He's been ready to go throughout all of this as well.
Penn State's got one of the better numbers in terms of sacks and tackles for loss in the league. Obviously, you guys don't have a lot of those, especially sacks. I think you're least in sack yards allowed in the Big Ten. You talked about individual coaches' contributions, but as a play caller, as you think about things not just through the week game planning, but in the rhythm of the game, how do you, I guess, what role do you play in keeping protections maybe a little bit mixed and confusing fronts and just keeping the pocket cleaner?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes into our weekly preparation and the quarterbacks and us as a staff knowing what we're trying to accomplish. And you nailed it. We're trying to avoid those plays that push us backwards, whether it's penalties or tackles for loss or sacks. And when we can play our game and stay ahead of the chains, we're pretty good. We have a lot of plays that we can go to, when we're in that moment ahead of the chains. But I think most of it goes into the quarterback's understanding through the week. Hey, here's what we want to get into, and I know Coach Hiller and Coach Hart, they really focus throughout the course of the week in different situations on our protections and where we're vulnerable, what we need to get out of, and I can see it as I'm watching the film too, but they verify it and maybe make sure we game plan around those bad looks. Everything doesn't have to be perfect as far as the look we're going to see. We just want to make sure we stay out of the ones that we're vulnerable in. And so mostly, it's carrying out on Saturdays what the weekly preparation was, within the game plan to stay out of those situations.
Stevie's on a little bit of a roll running the ball right now. Just from earlier in the season, the way he was running it to the way he's running now, is there a difference in just how he's running and then how he looks when he's running with the ball?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's a confidence and a swagger that he's got back, and he just had to let things come to him. You look at last year and the success he had, and there was huge high expectations, and I think people early were certainly thinking the key to stopping us was to focus on him, and I also think about we lost from last year some pretty good offensive linemen, and as many as there were coming back, there were some key components to the offensive line that are on playing in the NFL right now. And we've had some guys that have stepped in and done an awesome job, but it just takes time. And, I think in those early games, we struggled a little bit, and then we played the Ohio State game, but I felt like those weeks of practices, we were still getting better. And then it's kind of finally started to show itself here, as the season's gone along. So another huge challenge this week against Penn State because they do a great job against the run. And, I think our guys just have a different confidence and swagger about them, not just, overall, but also especially in the run game and how we've, Northwestern, I thought, had a very good run defense, and we continue to grind it out. And, Stevie obviously spearheads a lot of that with, his ability, and I thought the first drive of the game against Northwestern, he really set the tone with some big runs, running through guys and running over guys that gave us a lot of energy.
It was Coach Kalen DeBoer, Indiana's offensive coordinator, Broyles Award nominee offensive coordinator. Not sure that he can win that being at Indiana, and if you don't think that matters, you're wrong. We talked about that earlier with perception. College football playoff right now with Minnesota being their 9-0 record, slightly disrespected after a monster win over number 4 Penn State, has them still sitting behind a couple of 3 one-loss teams, which makes no sense. Of course, it won't really matter. Minnesota will have the opportunity to win their way into that top 4 because if they win out, that would include additional wins over Iowa, who's ranked, over Wisconsin, who is ranked. That'll take care of itself. They're also going to end up if they do that, they'll end up in the Big Ten championship football game, which there's your gigantic opportunity. But because of what the disrespect given them thus far, I'm going to say that in Minnesota is not a one-loss team, is not a team that can absorb a loss. And it doesn't matter who it's to. They could possibly go to the Big Ten championship game, lose a close game to Ohio State, and still not make it in that top 4 because they're not getting the respect right now. They have a lot of room to go. So, but it's going to be very interesting to see how things shake out. There's a ton of SEC teams at the top right now. They usually do that. I don't understand that because they're doing that more on name. Alabama's played no one. They played one good team, that's LSU, and they lost at home. The other teams that they've beaten all have a minimum of 3 losses. They're not. They haven't even the teams. They're just not a good schedule, and so I'm sorry. It's just I think people got to get over this. Just because it says Alabama on the front doesn't mean a lot, but who knows? Let's see. Some games last night. Purdue lost to Marquette. Ohio State won big in the Big Ten. Indiana Saturday taking on Troy at the Simon Scott Assembly Hall. Of course, after the game with Todd Leary follows live from Yogi's. Come on out. Either have a meal at Yogi's, watch the game, or if you're at the game, come afterwards. Indiana playing on television at noon football against Penn State. So I'll be out at Yogi's checking those games out without doubt, man. It's going to be a great football day. A lot of games to man, things start getting decided now for this college football playoffs. There's to me, there's no room for error from this point forward. You lose, bye. For most teams, there's very, very few teams that's going to be able to absorb a loss. The later in the season you lose, it hurts you much worse than if you lose early on. As you can see, the teams like Oregon, who's sitting up there, that boggles my mind. Again, that's a team that's in front of a Minnesota team that just beat Penn State. But yet I don't get it. I'd like to sit in that room and just hear the reasoning of some of this stuff. But we'll see, man. It'll play itself out. But I just want to thank everybody again. Thanks to Dustin Schutte. Thanks to Dylan Sin. Thanks to Elton Hayes for being on the program today. We appreciate that. Thanks to Jake for keeping us on the track. Tomorrow, the Todd Father joins us back. We're talking Indiana basketball as the Hoosiers will go on to try to look for a fourth win on the season. Trace Jackson Davis, who's going to be a superstar. And it may not be next year. It may be by the time this season rolls around because he is really attacking this season already. And you've got to love what he is doing on the court. He is going to quickly become Indiana's most important front court player. And to me, that says a lot because you've got a third-year player in Justin Smith there who should be assuming that role. But I think that's going to go to Trace Jackson Davis without doubt. He is already showing consistently that he's going to come to play every game. So I look forward to talking to more of that with the Todd Father tomorrow. So make sure you join us then. But pretty much that's going to wrap it up for today. Appreciate everybody on the show. Appreciate you guys for listening to us here from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. I'm Jim Coyle, and I will see you on the radio.
Somehow I'm still here to explain.